black thing go from left to right, and I thought, I'm going to die out here. No one's ever going to know. I couldn't believe what my eyeballs were showing me. I'll never forget how evil the eyes were. It was horrible. I mean, I've never seen nothing that evil.
It ran towards me at a rate that I can't even explain. Turned and stared at me, and this look of, I just want to kill you. I want to say it was human, but it wasn't.
He was yelling at me to grab a gun. I was like, for what? He said, just grab a gun. And there's footprints all the way to the door of my house. It had went inside my garage, all the way to the door.
911, what are you reporting?
Jesus Christ, you better...
Sir?
Zia!
Hello?
Get somebody out here.
What's going on now, sir?
That son of a bitch is about 6'9", I don't know.
Do you see him now, sir?
Yes, I'm looking right at him.
Uh-oh.
You're listening to Sasquatch Chronicles. Check us out online at sasquatchchronicles.com. If you've had an encounter, email me. My email address is wes@sasquatchchronicles.com. Welcome to the show, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. Got a great show planned for you tonight. Gosh, it's cold out there. It's been windy and raining, and I've been sitting here watching the lights flicker on and off, and I'm sitting here thinking, man, I got to get the show up before the power goes out. It's been pretty rough out there today. I hope wherever you're at, the weather is much better. Tonight we'll be talking to Ken, and Ken actually has a very cool encounter in Pennsylvania. Him and his buddies went driving down this old tunnel, and it used to be a railroad tunnel back in the day. They don't use it anymore. And as they were going down this tunnel, they thought they had come across a bear until it stood up and kind of looked back at them. Then we'll be talking to Dakota. Dakota is current military, and he describes kind of a weird situation on a base where they told him to go check out a bear that was peeking in car windows. But past that encounter, Dakota actually was out with a buddy of his when they were off duty, and they ran into a Sasquatch. He'll kind of describe the area out there on the East Coast. If you've had an encounter and you'd like to be on the show, shoot me an email. My email address is wes@sasquatchchronicles.com. Hope everyone's week went well. Let's jump into it tonight. I want to welcome Ken to the show. Ken, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Wes.
Yeah, I really appreciate you being here. And I know your encounter took place in Pennsylvania. I'm pretty excited to hear your encounter, actually. I was really fascinated when I read it. If you would you start from the beginning, kind of tell us what you were doing and walk us into what happened?
Sure. It was probably 99. Me and my buddies, we went cruising on the nighttime there, and we like to go down into the woods, and there's a waterfall down in there. We all hung out. It was drinking time, but we weren't doing that this time. About half a mile from the waterfall, there's a big tunnel, an old train tunnel, and it's probably, I'm going to say, about a mile long, and it goes and it wraps around as you go in. So if you're standing at one end, you can't see the light at the other end. So my buddies and I were like, hey, let's go take a ride through the tunnel. They had tore up the railroad tracks and railroad ties and everything, so you could actually drive through. And we were on my buddy's tracker. It was a big thing in 99. We get in. He's like, okay, let's go on in. So we're driving through. And as you enter the tunnel, you can't see the other end. So when you get halfway through, it's black as black can be, because there's no light from either end. And this was probably 11:30 at night. And as we're driving through, we're seeing branches, like big logs, just laying all through the tunnel. And it's in the middle, it's kind of humped up. So as your headlights are pointing forward, you can't see down on the sides too well, because it's where the railroad tracks used to be. And as we're driving through, we see this big furry thing sitting in the middle of the tunnel, but off to the side down in the dip. And he's like, oh man, there's a bear. Check that out. And I'm like, that's not a bear. So as we get further closer, it probably stood about, the back was about 4 feet high. And he's going, "That's a bear, man." And I said, "No, it isn't. It was too red. Like, we have black bears around here in Pennsylvania, but I've never seen one with this type of like a red fur on it. I've heard of them maybe being a brown bear, like having like a cinnamon brown bear." So as we get closer, this thing stands up, and I'm telling you, it's standing 7.5, 8 feet tall. And we don't see any face yet. It's just a back towards us. Arms are hanging down almost to his knees. Big muscular thing. I mean, it looked like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. This thing was just built. And he puts the high beams on. He's like, "Look at that." And this thing turns around and looks at us. You could see the whites of his eyes and just like a gnarly look on his face with the teeth hanging out. And I'm like, "Dude, that's a Bigfoot." And he's like, "No." As the Bigfoot looks at us, he's staring at us, and he, almost like a push down, like when you're grunting when you have to go to the bathroom, he lets out this horrendous noise. It was, I'm not going to say a growl, more like a screech. And at that point, we're like, "No way, we got to get out of here." So we shove it into reverse. And as he's looking behind us to get us out of the tunnel, I keep my eyes on this thing. And it's 99. We didn't have cell phone cameras. And at that point, I'm like, "Oh, I wish I had a camera." As he's backing out, this thing is walking away. And when I say walking, he's taking steps that are probably 5-foot strides. And 3 steps, he was gone. Like he was out of sight.
When you said tracker, is it those little 2-door cars?
Yeah,
I remember
little
those
4x4s.
Yeah, I remember those. Yeah, that's fascinating. Now, when he turned and looked at you, can you make out any facial expressions? I mean, did you have the impression of, "I'm looking at a human," or did you have an impression of, "I'm not sure what I'm looking at"? Can you kind of describe what you saw?
It had, I'm going to say, more of an ape face. Conical head, like it stuck up, big forehead on the front. The mouth was real low, not much of a chin. And the nose, it looked like a human nose, but it was wider. I mean, we were probably 15 feet away from this thing, so you could get a good look at its face. But yeah, it had more of an ape look to it.
You know what's weird is, I think I've seen pictures of that tunnel you're talking about online.
Oh, really?
There was a hiker that posted a picture. It's like an old, really, really old, like railroad tunnel, isn't it? I just saw the outside of it.
Yeah.
I'll have to send you a picture. It's the same one I'm looking at. But the part that's fascinating to me is the fact that he's in there, like sleeping, I'm assuming. And you hear a lot of reports of them like going in barns and sleeping.
Yeah. Now I don't know whether he drug him in, but there was no way a human being was going to drag these logs in there. And they were all leaned up against the side, almost like a shelter. But we're talking logs that are a foot and a half around. I mean, they're big logs. There's no way a human could pull those in there, unless he had a tractor or something.
Yeah, the other thing, too, is his reaction. You know, how he just kind of stands up, has his back to you, and kind of tilts his head and kind of looks at you guys.
Yeah.
It's such a bizarre reaction because, you know, most wild animals, if that had been a black bear, it would have bolted.
Yeah.
Any other animal, it would have bolted. But for this thing to kind of stop, and do you think it was just trying to figure out what you guys were doing, or what was your impression as far as what was going on? You just woke him up?
I think that since it is like mounded in the center of the tunnel, he would have heard us. But I mean, inside this thing, there's drips. I mean, the water's coming through. It's loud inside there because everything echoes. As we were coming around to see him, he's down, and I don't think he really noticed that we were there, or he knew that we were there and thought maybe we were going to go past him. But it wasn't until he stood up that we got a real good look at him. It was scary, I'm telling you.
Yeah, it's terrifying, man. It's terrifying to run into these things. What did your buddy say when you guys finally left? Did you guys talk about it?
He's like, "No, I don't even want to talk about it." He says, "That thing was the devil." I'm like, "No, it was a Bigfoot." He's like, "No, it was the devil." I mean, he was a kind of a religious kid, so he just kind of put this whole thing out of his mind. Never said a word about it.